see anyone here for public participation. So we'll get going with our first budget, which is the police department, which is account number 210. And we have Chief Brown with us here tonight. Welcome. Mike, do we have a subcommittee report, please?
We do. So we met with, Doug and I met with Chief Brown Friday morning to review the budget. I'll just start off with the cover sheet that Chief Brown put together. So the percent increase for the budget, he's coming in at 3.99%. Budget within guidelines, as usual, the major drivers is in many of our budgets, salaries, benefits, and he also mentions cost of vehicles keeps going up. In terms of any line item over 10%, there is a 10.2% increase in education training because there are training for the training academy for new officers. Budget line went up due to a number of people going through that program. So we're still in good position in terms of staffing. We are down 3 officers now. There are also some retirements coming up as well that are known, but it should not be an issue to fill these positions. I think we have the pipeline of candidates and potential candidates, and we're doing pretty well at the training academy in terms of when prospective police officers from various towns go to the academy. We have some Burlington instructors there that make a favorable impression on the trainees, and that's kind of helping our pipeline of people into the town as well. So nice job there from a training perspective and a recruiting perspective. I'll step now through the main budget page, the overall sheet with all the information on it, and go through. So salary section, full-time up 3.8%. I did ask about part-time salaries being up 9.6%, and those were step increases, and that primarily is the crossing guards are the main component of the part-time salary positions. Overtime at 4.65%. Kind of looking down through this, there's really nothing else that jumps out except that 10.42% for the education tuition, which we talked about. So that's pretty clean, and just working my way down through the detail on this, I did notice, I don't know if it's the first year this was done, but some of the lines in the salaries were red. Mm-hmm. That's just interesting. I wasn't sure what that was, but that's a planned retirement. So just another way of kind of giving us more information on what's coming. Animal control officer also, planned retirement there. And I think that was it. There were some kind of discussion on different things. We talked about the body cameras. That's just getting underway with a kind of a trial deployment. There's 1 sergeant and 3 officers in traffic that are kind of a test group, but that's going well. So that's something we've been tracking for a number of years now. It's really starting to get ready to roll out. Yeah, that's about it. Everything else was pretty standard. The subcommittee voted 2-0 to approve, and Cheyenne is joining us on the WebEx. He wasn't at the subcommittee meetings, but he did look over the budgets for police and fire, and he didn't have any issues or questions either, so generally approved.
Sorry, Chairman, I did have one quick question. The animal control officer who is retiring, are they being replaced, or have they already been replaced?
So that is a contract position under the BMEA, and that is being worked out with town administration right now. We're at the very early stages because I don't have an exact retirement date, but we've begun the process to talk about it to replace that.
Okay, are you done with your report?
Yep.
Mike? Okay. Chief Brown, would you like to add anything to that?
No, thank you, Mike. I mean, basically, I tried to keep everything in line as best I could. You do see a couple of bumps. The M&S went up by about $4,500. That's a direct driver of costs for ammunition as well as some training cartridges for our tasers. What was happening in the station was we made the mistake of supplying them or keeping them in storage down in the range where the gun range is. And after only about a month or so, they started to disintegrate because of the conditions. But what we've done is we've gotten better training cartridges now that will sustain the different environmental conditions within the building. So those have gone up, and like everything in the world right now, everything else is going up in cost. The ammunition has risen quite a bit. And under capital, again, for whatever reason, the cruisers keep going up. They've gone up about $7,000 again for FY '25, so that's reflected in there. And because of the additional hiring we'll have to do, I had to bump in some new money for ballistic vests for new hires. And then the education and tuition had to go up because the potential to put new officers into the academy. So those are the basic drivers, but I'm willing to take any questions.
Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you talk about the ARPA offset for the clerks? Is that something that's a yearly thing, or how does that work? Or is that part of the pandemic stuff?
Mr. Denizio will be joining us.
I guess so.
Thank you. I was just itching to come up here anyway. This is one of a couple departments that we've been using some ARPA funds to offset some costs in their budget. What had happened during when COVID first hit and ARPA became available, we saw a real need in the areas of mental health, and specifically in the police department and in the youth and family services, and we dedicated some funding to that for the last couple of years. This year, that ARPA runs out at the end of the calendar year, next calendar year in 2024. So instead of paying for half of that salary from ARPA, the idea was we would fund these positions and then see if, as COVID went away, the need went away. However, that hasn't been the case. COVID has gone away, the need hasn't. So we've absorbed half of a half, if you will, a quarter
So
of
next
that
year
into the budget. Yeah, the next year, you'll very likely see the same thing.
Another question. In the salary table where you have all the different patrol officers, you have a specialist column. Can you talk a little bit about what some of the specialties are and what the pay bumps are there?
Sure. Under the collective bargaining agreement with the patrol officers specifically, we have to carry 14 specialists by contract. So most likely that's your detectives, your traffic officers, your traffic safety officer, the officer who fills details. That's just been negotiated over the years into the contracts, and they get a bump in their pay to handle those positions.
Those are the specific specialties?
Correct.
Okay, great. I'm all set. Thanks.
Cheyenne?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Just a quick question about the ammo storage. We did, as you mentioned, we purchased improved cartridges for training that do not deteriorate as easily. Is there a way to store them better that would prevent or at least mitigate deterioration over time of even these cartridges?
Yes, so we learned our lesson.
So now the new cartridges that are coming out, they are stored in a different location through the building.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Don't forget to put your hand down, or else I'll keep calling on you, Cheyenne. Roger.
My flip answer was build a new police station to store them in, but. I guess one question under the capital, there's like $50,000 for new servers. So how often do they get replaced, and what are you planning on buying with 50 grand?
So that $50,000 is a recurrent thing. We basically have a long-term lease with Dell to fund that $50,000, and that was part of that Pro Phoenix upgrade for police and fire. So that server actually will run the Pro Phoenix system for police and fire, but what it's allowing us to do as well is take certain components in the building off of the old servers and put them into this new one.
Okay, 50 grand's a lot of money for a server.
Yes.
50 grand a year is a lot of money. Here comes John.
So it's more,
I'm sure it's more than just a server.
yeah, it's basically the software as a service. So it's the licensing, it's the support and maintenance, and the hardware. So you pay for it over time. You're not buying a new server for 50 grand every year. It's more than just that. It's one of the items when we had MIS that when we talked about doing the upgrade, the 5-year, what we call the Cisco lease, but who knows what it will be, but that multi-infrastructure 5-year plan about working the police department into that also, so that you'll see less of these one-offs where someone has something that's really technology related in their budget that isn't a specialized thing, because that is part of the Pro Phoenix project, which is more than just the police department.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, I understand the need for sort of constant, continuity and upgrades of software and maintenance and everything. That number stuck out, and I didn't remember it from last week. A different question. Let me finish this. The animal control officer, this is sort of a side question. How's the new building fit for the dog pound coming along? Is that not direct, is that part of the administration, or do you oversee any part of that? There was a warrant article to refit the building over by the DPW one, and I wondered if that. if you're
Ongoing
using
and
that.
almost complete, yeah.
Okay, great. Good to see that. I had a similar question about what the specialists were, but I think Steve already answered the question, so I'm all set. Thank you very much.
Chris?
So in looking at the unanticipated overtime, can you talk about what the other category is and what that would, that $95,000 would cover? Please?
Oh, okay, so yes, so other under OT is everything from emergencies, unanticipated investigations that could come up, regional response team callouts, storms, disasters, academy instruction, accreditation, alcohol compliance. There's a ton of things that could go under there, but we do as best we can to take an average over the past couple of years and build it in.
Was it answered? That's all of them. I gotta look. Oh, so can you talk a little bit about what the recovery coach is doing?
What she's doing?
Yep.
Okay, so the recovery coach, she's the part-time position. She works in tandem with our mental health clinician. So right now, she has had an increase in the amount of calls for service. I'm just going to her sheet right now. So she has had an increase of about, 65 individuals in 2022, and she's got 77 people that she's helping now in 2023. Out of the ones that are in 22, 31 are still in her charge. So again, working on a part-time basis, she's done a very good job following these people, and right now she's also working on the opioid settlement with bringing some ideas to the town on how to spend some of that money. So between her and the mental health clinician, they're able to take in a lot of our mental health calls for service and work with them throughout.
Can you write another one?
Yeah.
The mental health clinician, is that still split position, or is that a part-time position?
So she is the one that we were speaking about earlier with the opera. She works full-time hours, but the salary is
Okay.
part-time and then supplemented.
That's what it was, okay.
You all good, Chris, or?
I think so.
Okay. Rob?
In the salaries and incentive, there's 4 categories to the right side that I don't understand what they mean. I understand what a master's is, and I know what a BS and an AS and an EMT is, but an ARM, TRN, and G is...
Oh, sure. So that is the armorer and training officer. So those would be one of those like specialists that we spoke about earlier. We have 2 armorers in the department that service all our firearms and other weapons between the tasers and the OC supplies and stuff like that. The column next to it is FTO. That's the field training officers who would take a new officer out and work with them for about 12 weeks until they're ready for a solo patrol assignment. The CPR and DARE, we give a stipend to the CPR instructor. We do that in-house. And then the final column is computer investigator, the assistant technology officer, a backup court officer, and the communications liaison for 911.
What does the communication, the computer investigation officer do?
So the computer investigator officer, we just put that into play, I want to say it was 2 years ago now, and that investigator is specific to computer crime and internet crime, everything technology related. So they're specially trained to do all of that type of work, so they get a stipend under the contract.
Love to know what the training actually is.
So he's had quite a bit, actually. His name is Sage Costa. We sent him down to, I don't know if it was Quantico or somewhere else in Virginia, where he received specialized training for a week or 2, and then came back with about $5,000 worth of equipment in order to go in and decode phones and a lot of times if we get the scams that come over the internet, we'll give it to him, and he's able to get in and it is way over my head, but able to get in and decode where the IP addresses are coming from and do that specific type of investigation.
Sounds like you may want to make a new friend and chat with him for a
I'd
little
love
bit.
to talk to him.
Rob has some deep experience in this area. Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one question on the last page of the budget, special accounts and medical expenses for injured officers. So that's the equivalent of workman's compensation that you cover yourself. Is that insurance-based, or?
No, it's 111F. It's called specifically for public safety employees, police or fire. The fire has something similar in their budget. It's for people that are injured on duty for
Right.
some, certain costs.
So how do you decide what makes a claim, generally you have to check a claim out to be properly priced and all of that.
Yeah,
How do
we have a
do-
third party that does.
You
that
do?
for us, yeah.
Okay. And that's just sort of a running budget that is a ballpark? Any idea how much we actually sort of use
So
recently?
far this year, if you go back to.
No, not just this year, but in general.
Both public service, both public safety departments go over it.
Great.
Since I have both chiefs, yeah, put a little dig. It's just so unpredictable. Frank.
What do you
don't
tell
know.
them? If they get hurt, you'll hurt them more?
Yeah, just stop getting hurt. Simple.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. David, and I'll get to you next, Cheyenne.
Chief, in the contracted services, your vehicle insurance deductibles and repairs, $14,000, is that different than the town insurance that I would figure would cover the vehicle insurance?
So we obviously are insured through the town, but what happens is if we have to pay the deductible would come out of this account, and then any insurance proceeds that come back to reimburse us come over to the town, and then accounting does what accounting does with it, but we would pay the deductible.
So, David, the way it works for most departments is if there's a claim and it goes through insurance, when the claim is paid back to the town, it goes into a revolving account. specifically for that type of, but very often, the amount we get back doesn't cover the cost of fixing or whatever. So then Sam back there has to chase down the departments of how they want to cover the rest of the,
But that's not all covered through town insurance, so it just.
right. Right, it's for, when there's a delta between what we get back in our claim
Yeah.
through the town's insurance and what the replacement costs are, if there's any delta there.
And ultimately, the department is responsible for that. That's right.
Well, the heavy user departments, the ones that have a lot of claims, they have to budget.
What other departments?
The troublemakers.
Two of them are here tonight, and one's coming next time. Well, it's who you would expect, the ones with the biggest fleet are gonna have the most. DPW is the number one, they hit mailboxes and stuff like that.
For the record, ours are less expensive than fire, so.
Thank you. And then just two very small questions. The fire and range maintenance, is that for the basement?
Yes.
Range? And then you have right after that is Devon's. I assume that's different training?
Yeah, so we go outside once a year. We have to fire the rifles outside, doing tactical training and whatnot. We have to pay for the use of that. Thank you.
Cheyenne?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a question about the recovery coach. You mentioned that her or their workload is increasing, but they're being paid as a part-time employee, but doing the work of a full-time employee. Would it make sense to make that a full-time position, or would it make sense to perhaps hire another part-time recovery coach to assist in the workload?
So at this point, what I would say to that is between the
Recovery coach and the mental health clinician, between the two of them, they are able to handle the workload. And unfortunately, with our recovery coach, she's just about to finish up law school. So I don't know that we'll necessarily have her here for a long period of time, but the work isn't so overwhelming that between the two of them, they can't handle it, and a lot of the disciplines kind of merge together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn? I'm sorry.
A little early. I think we may have a little more discussion. Chris?
Second that.
Good try.
So I'm just curious, I mean, AEDs are super important. How many AEDs are bought with $4,200?
So we don't buy a lot with that. We just got a grant, and the new AED cost about $1,650. So I have the AEDs in the capital plan. I think you'll see them in 2027, 28. But what those specifically do is if we use an AED on a patient, we have to get new pads. And we also get software upgrades into the guts of the AED, if you would. And sometimes they've dropped on calls and we got to replace covers. So it's there more for maintenance.
And then last question. I saw the dispatch chairs 3. I mean, I'm assuming that these are chairs that they're appreciative and that are ergonomic because a lot of their job is actually going to be sitting there.
Right.
I'll ask one that this came up in some emails, so I think it's good to get out in general. Assuming the new police station goes through, I think you would describe it, there's an intent that a fair amount of the firing range could be brought over from the old to the new station, so just so folks are aware of that. Are there significant other assets that you plan to carry over to the new station should it happen?
So the firing range, you are correct. We have a 4-lane firing range bay, 4 bays in the firing range. That is completely portable and can go over. And quite frankly, nothing else would I want to bring over to a new building. Just being honest. Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, so the dispatch consoles would go over. We just did that as part of the communications upgrade a couple of years ago in the radio system, but beyond that, nothing.
And presumably like things like phone and IT systems and so on, all the electronics
Technology,
would be
infrastructure,
portable.
and then anything worth salvaging.
What was that?
Technology, infrastructure, and
Okay,
then
good.
anything that was in great shape would be reused somewhere, if not in a new police station, then somewhere else.
Great, and leaving the mold behind, okay. Do we have additional?
Any antenna outside the building?
Final question.
Yes, Cheyenne.
We mentioned a certain allotment for ergonomic chairs. Would it make more sense to get standing desks?
So we actually have a few
in the building, and there have been people who've come to us for accommodation, and when they need that, we do buy them. But specifically for the dispatch center, it wouldn't work because you've got 3 who work at the same station, and not all of them necessarily agree that that's what they like, and there would be a huge cost for that actual console to become a stand-up console.
The only reason I ask is there's been a big push within, at least my company, for the standing desks. A lot of people seem to like them. Just thought I'd ask. Thank you.
Okay. I believe the
Vice Chair want to make a disclosure?
Quick disclosure, my son is a Burlington police officer. I did a written disclosure to the moderator, who's our appointing authority, and stopped in with the town clerk and made sure it was all good with her, and I think we're all set, but we're not voting on a contract or anything that would be specifically directly affecting him, so I was cleared to vote, but I did want to disclose that.
Thank you. Do we have anything else before we vote here? I did hear a motion in a second a while ago, so I'm going with that. All right, this is for the police budget of $10,542,088. And we'll go in reverse alphabetical order to shake things up a little bit today. We'll do a roll call since we have a remote member. David?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Cheyenne?
Yes.
All right, and just to double check, we do not have Brad, Chris Delaney, or Sonia here today. Okay. And the chair votes yes, that's 12-0-0. The budget is approved. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
We're going to do,
We're-
should
we're
we do the
also-
warrant?
We're going to be talking about warrant articles also in a little bit. Do we want to do just the one first so that Chief can leave
Yeah,
here?
I thought, do you want to do that, Chief? Just take care of the warrant? Yeah.
Yeah, so let me just ask this question in general. The general idea is to make life a little easier for our department heads by trying to do the warrant articles as we go along. And so and understanding that we can't vote on it until we have the full capital budget, as David correctly pointed out. Is this a good idea, or is remembering how you feel about things for when we vote about it a couple weeks from now inconvenient, or are we going to end up having the same conversation twice, which obviously would be missing the point? And is this something that works for the administration? Is this working for you, John, for us to discuss these ahead of time?
It's fine with us.
Okay, all right.
Works for me.
Okay. Anyone have concerns? Frank?
One thought would be if something is, if there's enough discussion around one of them, we could just hold it. That's an obvious option, but only if you really felt like there was more discussion needed or it was complex and you wanted to have the proponent back for the vote.
And that's perfectly reasonable. In fact, it would be great if folks could highlight any issues like that. We do have a night scheduled for talking about warrant articles in general where we can take all these votes. So if you think you're going to ask or need to resolve more things with department head, or if we've had issues come up that they'll get back to us on, then we will call them back in to help support that. Hopefully there won't be too many of those, but we'll see how that goes. So along those lines, I believe the one warrant article that would affect police is warrant 7-1, which is the public safety phase 3 communications infrastructure, since part of that that's both fire and police. So would you like to speak to that, Mike?
Sure, yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we spoke with Chief Brown about this also, and the way this public safety warrant kind of broke down document-wise, there's one part for police portable radios, then the fire has portable radios, and then an additional piece as well. So it's kind of split up into 3 chunks inside. 7.1. So this is to replace the portable radios that the police carry. As Chief mentioned, this is the last piece of a three-phase communication project. Phase 1 involved upgrading console systems. Phase 2 was the new antennas put up around town, and now we're on to kind of like the final piece for police and fire. We're going to replace 72 portable radios. There's 68 sworn members on the force, and then 4 extra as needed for emergencies or things that break or things of that nature. The radios in question came into service in 2006, so they're obviously pretty old. Chief said that they're starting to break down. There's contacts kind of wearing out, antennas breaking off, just in general, issues as you would expect for something of that age. So it seemed like definitely something we needed to get done. Subcommittee voted 2-0 to approve.
Okay. Do we have questions on the police radio portion of this article? Roger.
So are the current radios compatible with the new radios? What I'm thinking is that you should keep the old radios to use as spares or as extras?
Yes, they will be compatible, and we do have a bunch on hand that we can keep as spares, which will be operable with the new ones coming over. But many of them have just started to fail, so we're going to do our best to trade some of them in if we're able to do it. We're not sure if the program's going to allow it because we're going to a different type of radio. But we'll have probably about 7 or 8 that are in really good shape that we'll keep on hand in addition to the 4 new ones coming over.
Great, thanks.
Good idea. Do we have anything additional on this?
Motion to approve?
All right, so we're not going to vote on this, but thank you. Only because we're.
Second that.
Thank you.
I was ready.
Love the enthusiasm. So as mentioned, if everyone could just make a note as how they feel like they want to vote on this right now. And when we get back to, when we have Town Hall 1 has been able to go through the overall capital plan for free cash and so on, we'll then have the actual votes on these.
I do have one more.
Yeah, go ahead,
I
Roger.
was looking at the backup, and it looked like there were prices on 3 different manufacturers.
Yes, so.
Actually pick one and.
So what we did was we took the 3 best that were recommended by the Allcom that handles our communication systems that they felt were best for police and that have kind of flooded the market. So we took all 3 of those and we allowed all of our officers to basically test them on the road. And the consensus was coming up with this Kenwood Viking that we've put in for the warrant.
And just so I understand this clearly, these are in addition to the radios that are in each car?
Yes, the radios that are in the car are affixed into the car. So there's a radio head that works the emergency lights and the radio. These radios that you're considering are the portables that we all carry on our belt. You'll see a lot of the officers have the collar mics up on their lapels. It's this radio that we're talking about to replace.
Great, thanks.
I'll ask a question regarding that. Is there some reason that portable, why do we need them in the car in addition to having the portables? Could they just use their portable in the car? Or?
So the systems that are in the car, the radio that's fixed in there, it's just more durable, but also it controls, it's not just the radio, it controls the lights and the other emergency equipment as well. And the radios stay on your belt, so if you ever had to just jump out of the car, it's in there. Our fear is if we ever had to go to the portable system instead of the car radio, officers would be taking them out of their belt, and God forbid they get in an emergency and leave it in the car. Now they've got no sense of communication, so they're always on the belt.
Okay. Anything additional on this before we move on? Okay.
So do we have the amount right? It's,
So,
Sorry, just a quick question.
yes, go ahead, Cheyenne.
These radios that are in the car, you mentioned that they also control the lights, sirens, so on and so forth. is it a is it a good idea to integrate all these systems in case of failure? Basically, everything fails. Wouldn't it be better to separate the systems out that way? Even if the radio were to fail, the officer could use the radio on their belt and still operate the lights, sirens, so on.
Yes, and they can do that. If the radio
Dead in the car were to fail, let's say something got unplugged, they kick it, God forbid they're in an accident, they could still use the lights and siren, and then they could go to their portable on their belt and still get into the police station.
My only fear is that like over integration, once one system fails, the whole system fails, and that can create problems too.
Yes, Frank.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chairman. The estimated cost is 133,200, right? On this, am I looking at the right thing?
Yep, that's right.
$133,200, and that's based off of which one of the quotes?
So we're going, the warrant that's before you is for the Kenwood. It's the bottom one on the
Yeah.
quote, the 1850.
Okay, so if we divide the 1850 into the whatever it is, 33, that's how many you're gonna buy?
72, correct.
All right.
Right, and that, just to be clear, that 133 is rolled up into the total for the article of 7-1, which is 955,000. So there's, as Mike mentioned, there's three components to it.
Yeah.
That was the point I wanted to make. That's really, the number's 135. There's three components of that. There's a 685, and then two different pieces that are 135 each. This was more of the exact number, but wanted to,
Yeah.
you know,
So for the roll-up, you use 135? Okay. And it's all going to be free cash?
yeah.
Cheyenne, did you have an additional one?
Yeah, just a follow up. We mentioned that we have a contract with Dell for the servers, to not only to purchase them but also to maintain them and upkeep and software updates and so on and so forth. Do we have a similar contract with the radios and things like that, to upkeep them, maintain them as needed?
Yes, we do have a contract with Allcom. They service our radios.
So if we have one that gets broken on a call, we just send it in. We'd have a loaner on hand, or they would send us a loaner, they fix it, send it back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, looks like that's everything here. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
I wanted to just insert a quick clarification from our March 6th meeting, just because there was some confusion I may have caused on the Board of Health Medical Reserve Corps. My apologies to Megan. There was a $1,000 item there that I couldn't find on the scorecard. Mr. Denizio clarified that is part of the operating budget, even though it was listed with other things that weren't in this special area. So for future people looking for that, that's where to look. It's in the total. Okay, so moving on to the fire department budget, which is account 220, and we have Chief Connery with us here today. Welcome. Mike, do we have a subcommittee report on this, please?
We do, thank you. Just flip to that myself. So that's police. Okay, so I'll again go through the budget cover sheet. The percent increase requested this year, 2.92%. As with the police budget and a lot of the other budgets, the major drivers are salaries, new hire cost as well. Similar to the police, there are new hires coming into fire, so new gear, certification licenses, wellness expenses. Those are all drivers in the budget. When we talk about explanation of any line item over 10%, Chief mentions capital outlay. We can take a look at this as we step through, but that's for structural firefighting gear. We used to order, I think, 11 of those. each year, I believe, but that's been bumped up to, I believe it's 13. So, again, driven by, new people coming in. Licenses and certifications, that kind of goes along with new folks coming in and certifications of existing people. The wellness program, we talked about that. That's a state mandated wellness program, $250 for gym memberships, so that's increased. 111F payments, we talked about this with Frank and with the police. It's a mass general law that states that anybody injured in performance of duty, either fire or police, will be paid, their injury payments or components of them will be paid for by this 111F program, which comes, it's a line item in this particular budget to take care of that. Let's see, community risk reduction, we discussed that as well. This is a program that has an annual grant with the COA for smoke detectors for elderly, low-income people, et cetera, and I guess there's been, increased need for those or more people asking for that, so that expense was up a little bit as well. Personnel changes, we talked about that and noting happily that they're filling vacancies and expect to be fully staffed in the fall. So that's an improvement over our meeting last year where we were looking at staff shortages and some concern over that continuing and obviously having an impact on the overtime budget. But we appear to be doing well there. I'm just going to refer to my notes here. So so we've been catching up. There's still coming up some retirements and other vacancies that came into place, but we've appointed 2 firefighters in the last month, 2 more in the pipeline. Apparently, the chief has been able to do some procedures in terms of lining candidates up and requesting civil service list. He called it stacking, I think, that is speeding up our process of seeing more candidates and getting candidates in. Also, there's, I guess, word's getting out that Burlington Fire Department's a good place to work, so we're able to attract more candidates. So overall, it's been a nice job overcoming the issues that we started to see last year with, personally I had a little bit of concern on that. I'll also say that we talked a little bit about overtime, and you'll see in the budget that it's down 2.38%, but that does include an ALS transfer offset of $300,000. So that's the reason for it actually going down a little bit. Staffing, there's 4 shifts that the fire department has. The goal is to have 15 on a shift if you're fully staffed. Right now, we're not fully staffed, but we have 13 people on 2 shifts and 14 people on 2 shifts. And I seem to remember last year, the numbers were much lower. I'm thinking we had like 11 and some things like that, which automatically put us into overtime issues. So that's the kind of the staffing side and the overtime side. Just kind of stepping through the main budget page here. We talked about the salaries and the overtime. Looking down under expenses, we see everything's pretty contained. Capital outlay up 21.83%. That was the 2 additional structural firefighter gear drove that. Licenses and certifications, we see that went from $2,500 to $3,000. I think that's a function of new hires as well. The 111F payments went up from $42,000 to $72,000. This is based on history of kind of long-term injuries, and I think the feel that the chief has for this, that the $72,000 is the right amount to go with for this year. so based on trends and his experience. We talked about the wellness program, that's up 29.55%, but again, that's due to new hires coming in and getting the gym memberships. And community risk reduction up 11.43%. We talked about that as the smoke detectors that are in demand. Kind of stepping through the salaries and so forth. On the page with the chief and the assistant chief, I think John mentioned the transitional advisor stipend. Did we talk about that earlier?
I don't think so.
No, okay.
Not this season.
Okay, so that's on the other stipend area, and that is, we've seen this in other departments where if a leader is leaving, they spend time bringing the next in line up, and then the next in line also spends additional time getting that training. So this is in there. It's not to say that the chief is planning to retire, but he's retirement eligible, so it's just in the budget as kind of a marker and may or may not be used. Continuing on, again, I noticed the red lines for positions that are retiring, so that's kind of nice. Flipping down to the final page on salaries, we see the ALS transfer to offset overtime of $300,000. There's also down in materials and supplies, a ALS transfer offset for ambulance of $60,000. So, we're starting to, I guess, reap some of the benefits of ALS for use elsewhere in the budget. And this one specifically goes into ambulance to cover specific costs around ambulance, I think, equipment and supplies and so forth. Capital outlay, we kind of talked about that with the year increase. And that was the bulk of our discussion for this budget, and we voted 2-0 to approve.
Right, thank you.
I did have a question about the.
One moment, please, Cheyenne. One moment. Chief, would you like to add to that?
Was that?
Would you like to add to that report?
Well, it was very detailed. I'd rather just take questions if you have them.
Okay, fair enough. Go ahead, Cheyenne.
Sorry, I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I had a question about the community risk reduction. In addition to just providing smoke detectors, fire alarms, that kind of thing, would it also make sense to have an education program for people to understand how to reduce the risk of fire danger, not beyond just having smoke detectors, but also how to mitigate fires or to put out fires in their own homes and things like that as well?
Well, we do
have
have,
two grants that we usually apply for and receive. One is a SAFE grant, student awareness for fire education, and our SAFE officers are connecting with the schools to get into the third grade. That's been targeted by the experts as a good age to get into and start talking about that kind of stuff. And also, Massachusetts also has a senior safe, which is where we get the bulk of the smoke detectors, but we can also do that education piece that you're talking about. So that is there.
Okay.
So
I remember having a top finder sticker on my window when I was a kid. Anyway, thank you.
Okay. Steve?
The ambulance supplies and apparatus repair have significant upcharges from the previous year. Do you foresee this trend going forward? And if so, are we able to offset some of those costs from the ALS R&R offsets, or?
So we ordered a new ambulance, and, you know, that when you get obviously a new piece of apparatus, it's less repairs. However,
You have to
the one that we
supply.
have not, the one that we're retiring is our backup, but ambulance 1 and ambulance 2 still go down for repairs every now and then. So, as they get older, they need more repairs. Hopefully, that ambulance will be coming in the next year. They can't get a cab and chassis. Everyone's having this problem, so we're just waiting to get a cab and chassis assigned out of Ford, and as soon as that comes, then they can build the ambulance. It's not the back of the ambulance that we're worried about, it's just getting that cab and chassis.
But for the ambulance supplies, is that uptick, because it goes from 41,000 to 68,000 for this year, is that for supplying the new ambulance, use of a larger amount of supplies, or is that actually inflationary or some combination of it?
I would say a combination of the supply, like, so we went from a BLS service to an ALS service, and those supplies cost more. We can, when the money gets paid, it goes into the ambulance account, so it's sort of like a self-feeding item or account, and that's, I believe, why there was $60,000 to offset that.
But do you foresee like ambulance supplies like continuing to grow from that 68,000 next year, or if some of the transition is going, like it will level out?
So I expect it to go up. As I said, the ALS supplies cost more. The second ambulance currently is BLS. The first one is ALS. The plan is to make the second one ALS, so we'll have to increase the supplies on that in order for it to be able to respond with ALS equipment.
Got it, thank you.
All set. Okay. Roger?
One of the noticeable increase, I don't think, Mike, you talked about was the increase in vacation coverage. What's the motivation for that, and how did you come up with the amount?
To be honest, it's difficult to pinpoint what actually drives the overtime. It's our best guess, because sometimes there's a lot of vacation and sometimes there's a little vacation. And if a lot of guys take vacation at the same time, then we check that off as overtime caused by vacation. But we have vacation, sick, injury time. So we do our best to come up with a fraction and make that the number we use.
Is that based on the history?
Yeah, so it's,
John, you're
the
itching to
total,
jump
trying
in
to
here.
back into that total by those specific categories is a little hard, and they use the history of, best case, because in our actual payroll system, it doesn't break it down that way, but in the system they use for tracking, it does. So they try to nail down the amounts in the buckets, and then adjust those when one seems way out of whack. But really what they do is they calculate all the overtime they're gonna need, and then try to, how much are we gonna guess is gonna be attributed to this. But in total, that's what they're using.
I guess I was hopeful that the nearly complete staffing was going to reduce some of the overtime, and it appears to in the overtime line. However, there's this other number that went up, so.
But that all rolls up into the same order. So those bits and pieces may go up and down, but in total, they all add up to that.
All right, and I guess I have a more general question for you, John, because it's probably you. The stipends that come on the eve of retirements, I know we've talked about them giving them to the person, bumped to the person who's retiring. I don't think I've previously heard a description of the policy to give the person who's potentially taking over those responsibilities getting a bump.
Yeah, that's
Can you
not actually
explain?
how it works, it's just that both of them are eligible for retirement.
Okay, good. Thanks for clarifying that. All right. Thank you.
Great. David?
So piggybacking a little bit on that with the overtime, so the ALS offset this year is 300,000. Last year, how much?
So the last 2 years, it was 360,000 all to overtime. This year, with the increase in those 2 ambulance accounts going up $60,000, directed 60 towards those lines, and then 300 to the overtime. So the overtime budget decreased a little bit in here, but it's actually even $60,000 more than that, because last year's offset was higher.
Okay.
And just a point on that offset, there'll be a warrant article, same way there was 2 of them last year, to use money from the receipts reserve, this 360,000 we've talked about a little bit here. That's a separate warrant article that also will be discussed.
So that'll be transferring from the account to the operating budget, basically? Okay, I'm sorry.
Now, again, with the staffing levels improving, where we had some, do you see overtime, anything happening with overtime? Or we always talk about is more staff needed, we cut that. What's the right model? So this year, we're gonna have full staffing.
We'll have full staffing planned by the end of the fall. We're in the process of 3 guys have an academy date. We're asking civil service for 3 more. So those 3 will be it. Unless surprises, but that ought to be it until we have no one else in the pipeline.
So is this overtime line item basically gonna be what we're gonna see? So full staff, again, we're continuing to have, another 4 in overtime.
Yeah, we've hopefully leveled up. That's the hope, that once we get back to full staffing, that we won't have that as a driver as much anymore. We're still gonna have all the other stuff we talked about with injuries, and the real thing is the minimum manning, so.
So I guess, is there a better staffing level to go after where you're kind of maybe hiring more people, but you're controlling?
It could be a potential solution or potential ask in the upcoming years to do exactly that.
I think we've brought that idea up many years.
And I think last year we said we'd love to hire more, we can't even get the ones we're supposed to have.
Right, so it sounds
Exactly.
like, we've always had trouble getting people, right? Now we found people.
Getting closer.
Yeah.
13 and 14 sound much better than what they were.
Yeah, and all departments that are hiring paramedics have the same problem. So we're all competing, we all get the same, 200 or so guys when we ask for the list. And like Mike had said, that some of the guys are keen on coming here. We lost one of the guys the last time because he has family in Bedford, but for the most part, we have guys transferring from other departments to us, taking the test again, coming to us. So the trend is there for us to close this out and hopefully reduce the overtime amount.
How are we doing on collections from the ALS side? So when we bump from BLS to ALS, the thought was we'd be able to cover the additional costs from that. We are doing transfers, that's good. Are we collecting money? Are we?
Well, in total, and we'll talk about it a little more when we do that article, we're collecting average about $450,000 more each year because of the ALS. The idea there is that we're projecting to use, 450 to 470, say, and we're asking to use 360 of it to offset the costs of the ALS, and then to save that 100 each year for every 50 to be able to buy an ambulance with it. Now, those numbers might change a little bit in either direction, but if the question is how many have the additional revenues that we had hoped for shown up, they have.
Good.
I don't think you're asking what the collection
No.
rate is, right?
No, we're collecting.
Yeah.
So that program's working out is the correct conclusion to draw there?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Chris?
So I'd say just a technical point here. I think when we're looking at the programs and when the 300,000 comes out, I think it'd be nice if it's like a cleaner line so that we can see the total then the 300. That, well, then when you do the math, it makes sense, but it doesn't quite look where it comes out. I think an administrative question, do we post, both for police, fire, any of our employees that have overtime, do we ever post what the salaries are after overtime for public information?
Maybe it is public information if someone asked for it.
Yep, okay. And I know we've stressed it, the overtime, as we keep going, and I think last time we learned a lot about the shifts, and one of the driving factors from last year was that, but, again, keep stressing, the more overtime our firefighters are doing, the more likely they are to get hurt. And it's very positive to hear that there is this trend to come here, and I think whatever we can do to continue to advertise that this is a great place to live and work, so that we can reduce some of that stress for our firefighters so they can do their best to protect and serve would be great.
All set? Yes, go ahead,
I was
Roger.
going to do the move to approve thing, but we're not doing that.
Let's wait a moment. We will on this, actually. I just had some questions about the stipends. I know there was a couple email questions that gone around. It would be worth getting that information out there. In particular on I'll let Mr. Denizio speak to this, but basically on the chief and assistant chief, the column headers don't correctly apply on the stipends there. Did you want to explain that just for everyone here?
Sure. So if you were to go down to the chief and assistant chief, you'll see on the far left is what the base salary is. That's based on if we only paid a chief and assistant chief from the A&P salary grid. And if we did, I can tell you we wouldn't have a chief or an assistant chief. But the real problem was with the lines. Once you get past EMT, those headers of each of the categories for stipends are actually for all the firefighters above them. Theirs are a little bit different. So when you look in the CPR stipend column, you see a different amount for the chief and assistant chief. That's actually for the chief, it's for being the FEMA, MEMA coordinator, and for the assistant chief, it's the training coordinator and part of doing accreditation. In the next column, you'll see a different number for the chief and assistant chief. And for the chief, that's accreditation stipend for leading the accreditation, and for the assistant chief, it's for being the emergency management coordinator for the town. And then in that last line we've already talked about, that's that because both of them are eligible to retire.
Okay, so just to make it clear to everyone, they're not simultaneously getting a paramedic and EMT stipend, as one might read from this incorrectly. But along those lines, I did have a question of, it does seem that some of the firefighters are getting both a CPR and a paramedic stipend. I would imagine that CPR would be a subset of being a paramedic already, or what am I missing there?
That is the CPR instructor stipend. We have 25 instructors that would teach the public.
Okay, so that's for instructing, not
Yeah.
receiving CPR instruction. Okay, great. And then just to make sure I understand this, I think you said that the assistant chief is the emergency management coordinator, is that correct?
Yeah, designated emergency manager.
Okay, so what I'm wondering is, and we'll talk about this in a moment, but in the emergency management budget, there's a deputy director 10K salary. Is that the same number, or is that an additional person, or?
Just the description didn't change, but the use of the funds did. It's where we used to pay that $10,000 formally, but we built it into the budget a few years back and started using that money in the grant to do some other things for emergency preparedness. So we can talk about it when we get to that.
Okay, what when we get to emergency management, I'll just want to make sure that we aren't double charging that amount somehow. Okay, great. Okay, do we have any other questions on this budget?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. All right, this is a vote regarding the fire budget of $10,254,893.
983, right?
I'm sorry, what did I say? Let me say it again.
Just say the correct amount.
10 million, thank you, $10,254,983.
Right.
Did I get it right that time?
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks for catching that.
We wouldn't want to short them 100 and something bucks.
That's how we save money in this town, $1 at a time. All right, David.
Yes.
Roger.
Yes.
Ed.
Yes.
Rob.
Yes.
Megan.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Frank.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
Ms. Campbell.
Yes.
Cheyenne.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, that's 12-0-0. Just while we're on a roll with the budgets, I'm going to suggest we do the emergency management budget next, which is account 291. And do we have a subcommittee report on that, Mike?
Yes, we do. So again, Doug and I met last Friday with Chief and the Assistant Chief and discussed the fire budget naturally and also emergency management. As you can see from the cover sheet, it's a level funded budget, so 0% increase. If we flip over and look at the detail page there, as John mentioned, we were kind of getting clarification on the stipends and today, and learned that the $10,000 amount here, it has actually been shifted over to the fire budget. So this $10,000 amount has been, needs to be updated to the actual purpose, but I'll let the chief talk about it. But in short, there was some hazard mitigation planning grant that didn't cover the whole expense of the hazard mitigation planning, so this money was used for that, in addition to some consultants for emergency management planning. When we get down to the next item, materials and supplies, this amount here, every year, it kind of depends on what is needed in particular for emergency management. I believe that none of it's been spent yet, so the chief and assistant chief will make determinations on that depending on what needs are for equipment and supplies, or potentially even training to use that money for. Also, under education, the typical education spend here was with Board of Health, like a joint planning. That has not happened recently because of the COVID, but the intention is to get back into that planning with the Board of Health as well. So that's that $5,500. So some of this stuff is a little bit in flux. As I discussed with the chief, anything that is not actually expended will get turned back over to the general budget, but that's kind of the plan for this. The subcommittee vote for that was 2-0 to approve.
Great, thank you. Chief, would you like to add to that and maybe clarify what that 10K salary line is actually going towards?
Okay, yeah. So on the 10K salary line, as John had said, it was not on the fire budget a few years ago. It got moved to the fire budget and just was not taken out of here. So we haven't really expended that, either out of the fire budget or the emergency management budget, one or the other. So, but what happened Former Chief Patterson, he had applied for a hazard mitigation planning grant 2 years in a row. 2021 didn't receive it, 2022 received it, but I didn't find out about it until 2023. And when he had applied for it, he had applied for 20, he had an estimate of 19,500 for the plan. And we were gonna have a grant to cover 1,950 of it. However, by the time everything, the grant rolled around, we were short about $11,000. Everyone's prices went up. The Metro Area Planning Council, who did it before, was not available to do it. They had lost staffing just like everyone else, and they don't have a lot of staff to begin with. So that is where that money is going. So that's $11,000 right there. For the expenses, materials and supplies, in the past, we've bought cots, blankets, pet supplies. We bought pumps in the past. Pumps can go anywhere between 100 and 400 apiece, depending on the kind of pumps that we use. Or if there's a large flood, we had it this last winter, we weren't able to get DPW because they were already using theirs. So we had to deploy our pumps. And a trash pump, which does a lot of water at once, goes about $2,000. So these are things that are possibly planned to get. So out of those supplies, that's what we would do. The special education and tuition, we've done sheltering drills in the past. There's FEMA and MEMA classes that MEMA offers, and now there's a regional, New England region that offers classes. So, and certifications for those, for different positions in a large incident.
Okay, thank you. Cheyenne?
You mute.
You're on mute there, Cheyenne.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just curious. I wasn't able to attend the meeting last week. This hazard mitigation grant that we are already receiving. Does that overlap with the emergency management planning grant, or is there a different grant that we can apply for? Is there anything available that we can apply for? Or is that sort of rolled into the same thing?
What was that other plan? Emergency planning grant? I'm sorry, I didn't. What was that?
Could you clarify the question, please, Cheyenne?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just trying to clarify. Our emergency management planning and hazard mitigation planning, are they different things or are they the same things? Do they overlap? I'm just not really sure which one is which.
Yeah, so a lot of those plans do overlap. The mitigation plan is basically a weather-related, natural disaster type plan. There is a comprehensive emergency management plan that does have a lot of what's in the hazard mitigation plan, but it's more. So there's a lot that overlaps. A lot of the data that we have from that's in both of those, we're part of the Mystic regional planning, and some of that data is in their plan that we share with other towns. So, yeah, there's a lot of overlap, but this hazard mitigation plan, getting it done, allows us to be eligible for other grants that conservation and planning are interested in.
Just to follow question then, what differentiates that? What does the emergency management plan cover more than the hazard mitigation plan? I mean, what constitutes a hazard? What constitutes an emergency in that sense?
So the comprehensive plan includes fires. It includes the weather-related, the man-made and natural disasters. So, I mean, I can't really explain it much better than that.
I think that makes perfect sense. I would just, I guess, natural disaster versus man-made disaster is really the crux of it, I think. Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. Do we have additional questions? Chris?
So I just want to clarify, I know you went over this, so this elected appointed 10,000 is actually going for the hazard mitigation?
Yes.
All right, I want to be honest, I don't love that it's, going for something else.
But just to be clear, I'm going to suggest we table voting on this. We shouldn't certainly ask any questions we have now, but until the budget is corrected to represent what it actually is, we'll want to table voting on it.
So that was going to be my next point is, once it then gets to town meeting, they're going to point out the exact same thing, and we're going to be in the exact same place. So that was going to be my potential recommendation, because I don't necessarily think we're against it. I don't want to speak for other people here, but making sure it's clear and correct, it always just helps with the approval and then the next steps here.
Do we have additional questions or comments? Roger?
Yeah, I was going to ask if we get an updated spreadsheet before we vote. So it looks like this budget actually has increased, because the $10,000 last year was moved to the fire budget. And this year we're spending, so this should drop if that was really the case. So we're actually increasing this budget to cover the hazard plan that's only partially funded by a grant. It's not a big deal. I'm sure that the hazard plan is necessary and useful. But it will look like this budget should have appeared to have increased.
So the hazard mitigation grant will reimburse us $17,550. So we'll be expending around $31,200, but we'll be getting $17,550. And I believe that goes back to the town.
All right. I guess I'm also curious about the expenditure, the money already spent, the 5346. That's on the current sheet. What did that go to? Did it actually go to salaries?
So that went, I'm guessing went to the deputy director. So it was expended out of this budget, but it is in the budget for salaries and fire.
Are you asking where the 10K went? Is that what your question is?
Some of it's spent, what was it
Well,
spent
okay.
on?
Or are you asking about something other than that?
I guess in the current year budget, my understanding from John was that last year, this item, the salary item, this actual payments were moved last year. So it applies in the current year budget. And that, so it shouldn't even have been here.
We have John here.
Am I confused, John? I'm sure I'm confused.
No. I was just going to recommend that we give you an updated sheet and
great.
answer to that. And
All right,
put
let's do it that way. And then I have a sort of a sideways question. With the Fox Hill School being in redevelopment, has emergency management will they be taking a look to see in what capacity that building can be used as an emergency shelter?
We have not talked to the schools about that.
I mean, not tear it down?
No, I mean the new building,
Oh,
right? I mean, they're making some effort to make sure that there is an emergency generator that will run parts of that building. It will have, the usual things. If it were useful in an emergency as some kind of shelter, that should be reviewed, even if it says, if the result is, we're not gonna do that. That's my only point, is take a look.
I would say in general, using schools as a shelter isn't a good idea because they have to do their business. And that's just my initial thought.
Except, well, sorry, this is probably a rat hole too far, but except the high school is the current designated shelter should there be an emergency.
We use
Or part of it.
Kelly Murray as the shelter.
Okay, I'm off topic here, so I'll take it offline.
That sounds like a worthwhile thing for the school committee to work with the fire department on, perhaps.
If there was any use for it, then yes, some discussion should happen. But if there's-
At least
if
find
it's-
out if there is.
If by policy it's not a good idea, then it need not go very far at all.
Motion to move on.
Okay, any further discussion before we move on? All right.
Just motion to,
Yeah, Cheyenne.
motion to second this until there's more clarification on the.
Yeah, we don't even need a motion for that. We're going to delay voting.
Done and done. Thank you.
Using my dictatorial powers. All right. Moving on to, let's go back to the warrant articles now. So if we could go back to warrant articles 7-1, which is the communications, and talk about the fire part of that, that'd be great.
Correct. Okay, great. So again, this is similar to the third phase that the police station has a piece of this warrant article for. This is for fire portable radios, estimated cost $685,000. You'll note that it's more expensive, a lot more expensive than the police was. The reason is that the units are bigger.
Cheyenne, if you could mute, please, that'd be great, please.
Units are bigger. They're more heavy-duty, more expensive, need to be heat resistant, smoke resistant, generally more rugged than the police units did. So we have 75 units requested for this. And you can see there's the all-com kind of breakdown on the pricing, and in addition to kind of like the base model price, it's almost like buying a car. There's, feature packages and so forth included as well. So it does add up to a significant expense. We did talk to the chief about whether they had tried other models and so forth, and he said that they did a trial run of different kinds, and this was the one that was selected. So do we even want the subcommittee vote, or do we?
Yeah, I think that's worthwhile having.
So subcommittee voted 2-0 to approve.
Okay. Do we have discussion on the radio portion of 7-1 for the fire department? I'll just call it out in a moment. I just wanted to highlight, if I understand correctly, the police radios are about 1,900 and the fire radios are about 9,100, so it's a lot more. Go ahead, Roger, for a second.
Similar question to the police. Are the current radios interoperable with the new ones? And will you be keeping any of them to use as backups?
They're interoperable, they work on the same frequency. Keeping the old ones, my experience has been that they sit in a room, collect dust, and eventually we get rid of them. We are replacing every member's radio. The ambulance has extra radios. We have radios in dispatch as spares. So we don't keep old ones to hand out as spares. We buy new ones and use them as spares.
All right, I guess I'm just, from a conservation point of view, I'm worried that you're throwing away an entire system of working radios because you're replacing them all at once. Can't argue with having new radios because everybody likes to have new radios.
So when we train on these radios, we train for emergency situations, using them in the dark without being able to see. And we don't want to put a radio in the hand of someone and they don't know how to use it. They've forgotten how to use the old one, they're used to using the new one. So that's why we do all of the new radios the same all at once. That way, if you're using a spare, it operates the same, has the same frequencies programmed into it. It's just a matter of life safety.
All right, I wish there was a good reuse of them. I don't know whether,
We trade them in, other than that.
okay, if they take them back and do something with them, that's good. Yeah, thanks.
Additional questions on the radios? Just a quick one. Are you able to communicate with the police radios with these?
Yeah, we can communicate with the police, all surrounding towns, most of Metro Boston. There's, I don't know how many frequencies, so many frequencies that we don't really need.
Okay, but
That's how they come.
what you're getting is compatible with what the police are getting, I think is the essence of the question.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, note your thoughts on this. So let's move on to the rest of the article there, please.
Yep, so the final piece is $135,000 for fire alarm radio box receiving system. This is going to be 3 TRX-50 alarm receivers, replacing similar receivers that are old and no longer being manufactured. Two of the receivers will be located at the main dispatch fire station headquarters, and one receiver at station number 2. And this system, again, is a software-based radio box receiving system, so, you know, more advanced technically. I think there was some problems with the old one with delays that the station got sometimes receiving the call from a radio box. Chief might be able to provide a little more information on that, but we voted 2-0 to support this.
Okay. Any comments on the receiver? Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just an educational question. So throughout the town, we don't use alarm boxes that you pull, am I correct?
Not on the streets anymore, but commercial buildings still have them.
Okay, so these receiving systems are triggered by pulling an alarm how?
They're wireless.
They're wireless, and they're in all the commercial buildings?
Most of the commercial buildings.
And who puts them in the commercial? Who
Their contractor.
Okay, so they are responsible for having the transmitting capability in their building,
Yes.
and we're in a compatible system that wirelessly you can get the calls coming in.
Yes.
And you have 3, how many receiving systems have you got planned?
We have 3 currently, and we're replacing 3.
Okay, and the 3 are the main, the sub, why 3?
So, by code, you have to have 2
Makes sense.
for redundancy. So those 2 are at our dispatch center at the main headquarters.
Okay.
The 3rd is at Station 2. That will basically also receive it, but send the alarms off at that station.
So the dispatcher actually processes this stuff, and that determines which station goes out, but everybody's seeing the alarm.
Yeah, so it's automatic alarms, so if we didn't have a transmitter or receiver down at Station 2, they would not hear.
Yeah, no, that would be a problem, especially if they had to make the call.
Yeah, they would be delayed.
Okay, and none of this works, this is all for commercial applications, am I right?
Commercial, apartment buildings.
Yeah, okay. So from a residential point of view, it's down to a phone call, period,
Yes,
right? And always has been, I guess.
yes.
Except there used to be pull boxes around neighborhoods, but that's gone.
Right. There are a few around town that are EMT boxes, that are radio transmitters, and they, at all the parks. And if you hit the button, we'll get that alarm. There's one at all the parks, so.
I see, and those are wired?
Nope, they're wireless. They are powered by solar.
Okay, all right, thank you, that's just education. I have no quibble with the budget.
Okay. Other comments on this warrant article? Okay, note your thoughts on this for when we vote. Let's move on to warrant article 7-2, which is the rescue ATV. Mike?
Yep. So rescue ATV being requested by the fire department, estimated cost $65,000. I am not sure that there was a couple pictures, and I don't know if those made it out in time for other people to see. But my first question was, is this an ATV like I think of an ATV? And it's bigger than your typical
Search for this.
kind of recreational ATV. I'll just hold this up. I don't know if do you have a picture you can share that?
Doug's going to put it up here.
Okay, all right,
So
good.
Polaris, that,
So
and you'll find it.
it's more than you think of as a typical ATV, or at least that I think of. So the reason for this is there are areas within the town that are hard to access. The two that jump out at me, and the two that are mentioned here, is the, around the Mill Pond Reservoir. I think it's a 160-acre area of, the pond and woods around that, that, encompasses a lot of trails, fire roads, old paths, old DPW trucks that are left in the woods. It's a pretty cool area. I go in there a lot biking, and I can tell you that every storm, trees are going down, so I see these fire roads, and I wonder, I don't know, this fire road is no longer passable. It's going to be difficult to get in and out of here, so that type of thing is what's being addressed here. The other area is the landlocked parcel, which again is similar. It's a big wooded area with a lot of people going in there. If there are issues, it's hard for the fire department to get in there and help with a fire or help with someone who may be in trouble. Chief mentioned a couple of cases. It's not listed here in the justification or description, but there was somebody at the Mill Pond Reservoir that had some type of medical issue, and the fire department had to get in there, make their way to this person, and physically carry the person out, I guess, presuming it was quite a distance. So this type of vehicle would help with that, in addition to, fire suppression and so forth. And I think there was also a situation at the landlock where a mountain biker had an accident in there, and it took a while to get in to help that person. So, when I hear those types of things where we've already had instances where people were hurt and it's an area that's difficult to reach, then this warrant article made a lot of sense to me, and I think Doug as well. So, yeah, that's kind of the reason behind it, and some of the situations it would be used in, and we approve this 2-0 in a vote.
Doug has put a example up on the wall there, or on the TV, the exact model that's being proposed. Would you like to add to that, Chief Connerty?
No, just, I want to reiterate the two incidents that really brought this up as a problem. You know, someone had a medical emergency at the landlocked parcel, and we were able to locate her by phone, but she was deep in. And then for the reservoir, a young woman had a severe medical issue, and the only way we could get her out was carrying her. One guy carried her, threw her over his shoulder and got her out. So, that's the type of thing that can cause injuries. That's the type of thing that's not the best way to get a patient out. And this is a dual-purpose vehicle. It can it has a gurney for a patient, but it also has a fire pump on it that can help support the brush fires that occur in both of those locations.
Okay. Do we have questions? David?
How is it transported? Can you drive it on streets?
It's roadworthy, yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you would keep it at the firehouse?
Yep, yeah, that's the plan.
Literally drive it there?
Yeah.
Tell
Yeah.
Steve?
Is that small enough to get on some of the landlocked forest trails, or like how far can you get into the landlocked forest with that?
We would get in as far as we could go. I mean, definitely closer than an ambulance.
Sure.
So, I mean, I don't have any measurements as to how far I could get in any of those locations, but.
Because I know at least with the reservoir, there's a lot of trails that you can get by with, but at the landlocked forest is kind of tight.
Roger?
So, as I recall, the fire department has a forest-type firefighting piece of equipment. Can you describe how big that is and what the relationship in size is between this and the?
So that's a F-550 Ford pickup truck with a pump on it. It has no capability of carrying a patient. It's a firefighting vehicle. It can basically go on the pathways, and but it can't get in between trees that are close together. Wouldn't be able to get up the landlocked. So.
I don't doubt that you can get further with this than you could with a pickup truck, but just looking for where there's too much overlap, but anyway.
I asked the question about the trees down, and they'll bring chainsaws in on this, so if something's blocked or in the way, I think if there's a walking path, my sense is this thing can navigate most of them. There may be some spots where they'd have to do some clearing, but I think they could get most places.
I have a question. Thank you, Chair. With the landlocked forest in particular, it is hard to access many of the trails, but in particular, you can't get in at all unless you go up to Bedford and down the path or around to Lexington and Turning Mill. Is there reciprocity with emergency services in those towns?
Oh, yeah.
To get
we have
in?
mutual aid agreements with all our surrounding towns, no matter what the issue is.
But you'd still bring it around to?
Well, our first call would be Lexington or Bedford. We're heading there, but we don't just give up on our call.
Thank you.
Doug has put up a better picture we just got from John a moment ago. Megan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Out of curiosity, how fast can a vehicle like this go?
I don't know. I really don't know what the speed is.
Challenge accepted.
Just watch out, don't get a ticket with it.
Probably like 30, 35 miles an hour.
Well, I'm just thinking, trying to get somewhere in an emergency, you want to go as fast as you can, as safely as you can, so.
Yeah.
Through turbocharged one, I don't know.
Cheyenne?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, just somewhat on a personal note, I've done a little shopping on vehicles similar to this. They travel about 45, 50 miles an hour with certain equipment, or depending on models. Is this $65,000 for outfitting it with the pump? Because they go for a lot less than that.
Yeah, that's for it outfitted, as you see on the screen there now.
Okay.
What you see there is the fire pump. It's got a hose reel on it. On the other side, it's outfitted with a
I mean, the reason I ask, I've seen vehicles like this, go for $10,000-$15,000. I'm just wondering if all that $65,000 is to outfit it to be an emergency vehicle as opposed to just a utility vehicle.
That's the quote that we got.
Thank you.
I guess in honesty, I struggle with this request, knowing the landlocked forest as well as the reservoir. There's a lot of rock walls, and the accessibility, in my opinion, is going to be hard with any vehicle into some of these spaces. Fire trucks, as well as I'm sure this other forest fire vehicle we have chainsaws that they regularly carry on them. So anytime we would come across something with a downed tree or whatnot, the chainsaw would be there where they could quickly cut and move on in a situation. And I hear the idea of two of these calls, but I'm also thinking of the gurney as we're looking, and that would be a pretty rocky place if you had a serious neck injury sitting on the back of that. And sometimes there is benefits to actually being carried out by multiple people. I understand from injury it's not an ideal situation, but for example, going over rock walls and trees and whatnot could actually be less dangerous if you're the patient themselves being carried. So I think I struggle with the accessibility to those locations, because I think with how both of those are described, even this vehicle is not going to be able to get to all aspects of it, where the current vehicles that we have could, or the firefighters or EMTs themselves. So that's just where my thoughts are.
Frank?
Did you want to have more?
Or it?
Did I cut you off?
Oh, no, you're.
Oh, okay,
you're
I'm
next.
sorry.
You guys
All right.
rock,
Next.
paper, scissors, or?
Yeah. You got a biggie here. This is clearly an improvement in service, or a upgrade. It does have a 15-year life, according to what I read here somewhere. Useful life, 15 years. So, that kind of makes it not so bad, I think, in terms of the cost. It's obviously not going to get used very often in a given year. Maybe not at all, maybe a few times, but, to me, this is a little bit like a snow blower. You really hope it doesn't snow, but if it does, you'd like to have the snow blower. So I think this could be a life-saving measure. You do have this last piece of it is a $18,000 fire rescue skid with 9 horsepower electric start engine. Is that the water fire suppression system? What is that?
So that the skid is what is the whole unit that goes on the back.
So we're looking at it there with the
Yeah.
hose reel and...
The hose reel and the gurney.
Okay, so that's where a lot of this cost is coming from. I mean, this, 18 grand right there. But what good is the thing without these additional capabilities to make it multi-use? So if you're going to do it, I would think you do this. One thing I'm wondering about, at the reservoir, I don't know that it happens very often, but people do go out on the water. We do have a boat at the main station, and we tow the boat to the reservoir. So this wouldn't be particularly useful for any kind of water rescue there. That's not the thinking.
No.
Okay. I guess I'm kind of torn. I feel like, they wouldn't bring it to us if there wasn't an element of, life and limb protection in spaces that we clearly make open to the public, and they're very open to the public. So it's a good thing to do. It has a long life. I think it'll have limited use, but I still would support it, I think. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, but.
Well, I know we're focusing on the two locations that, where we had medical emergencies, but, we've had fires along the power lines, and I know we have a brush truck that can go on those pathways, but they're not always open and clear. So it's more than just those two locations.
Okay.
Ed?
Just one more. I also don't know how you're going to get down some trails, but I don't think that's a requirement to cover everything. But with regards to the Mill Pond area, I've called in a couple of fires where I'm not an investigator, but it sure looks like kids started a campfire and it got out of control. And I know that there are fire hydrants there in locations. So when the discussion continues, if you could comment on, your ability to do that, that would be helpful to fight a fire there,
Yeah.
given this equipment.
Yeah, so when we fight a fire, we use the fire engine to pump it, but we get the water from the hydrants that are up there. So we can pump from the hydrant to this unit. This unit can drive into its location and fight the fire that the brush truck can't get to. But it's also mobile, so you can run this without having to be tied to a hose.
Well, how much water does it carry?
That is a-
820, wouldn't it? I don't think it tells us.
It's not gonna be much.
There are fire hydrants up there, they just stretch a hose.
It carries more than my water bottle, which I tried to use on a fire.
Well,
All right, so we won't call Ed.
Don't call me.
got at least one vote. Okay.
Doug, did you have something?
No.
Yeah, I'll just throw my 2 cents worth here. This falls in the category of adding a new capability relative to where we are now. So, sort of in the same way that we looked at new positions as, are they current needs or expanding capabilities? This falls in that category in my mind. I'll admit I'm sort of with Chris on this one. A little bit of a struggle as to to return on investment on this relative to other things. And, it seems likely that there's going to be additional costs associated with this, and that, there'll be the inevitable need for supplies and training on the actual equipment and so on. So it's not even just the amount that's listed here in the end. There's going to be a whole set of things that go with this. So, at any rate, that's just another thought there. Mike?
So for me personally, I mountain bike, and I mountain bike at the reservoir a lot, and I've been doing it a number of years, and there's been more than one occasion where I've had a fall, and you have a fall typically because it's a rocky area, a little tricky, and you fall and you land on a rock, and you're not in a position to protect yourself because you're maybe going over the handlebars or you're going backwards. So you're just praying that nothing bad happens. And I've had a couple times where I've had this pretty bad fall, and I lie down and I lie there for 5 seconds, and I go, a lot of times by myself, I take a deep breath, and then I start checking what's working, what isn't working. So, I mean, I personally can see that this thing could really be, could save somebody. And there's a lot of other people that ride out there. And most of the time, knock on wood, it's not bad, but, it could be.
If your family's listening, you just blew your cover there,
Well, I'm just being honest. I think it's got a potential to help people.
We'd like to know that you can, there's somebody you can call, will come and help. That's what we're
Maybe,
talking about.
maybe.
Well, they will
Well, they're
get
gonna
there.
get close.
I think Steve had something.
Yeah, just real quick, I do think I would like to see much more use cases, but the term return on investment when saving lives doesn't really kind of go together, because if we can save one life, you know, it's hard to value a life, so return on investment, it's just, we need to make sure that this is the right piece of equipment.
In the sense that if you spent $65,000 somewhere else, could you save more lives? That's really
true.
what I'm,
Yeah, sure.
really what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Life on investment. Cheyenne?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, I don't think return on investment, again, is also the right term for this. You know, if you can save one life, it's, you know, it's worth $65 million. But the point being, this is basically a glorified golf cart. I don't think it has the capability or the, you know, real usability that is being suggested here. I don't think it's basically a big toy. This is not something I would go for at all.
Okay.
That's my penny in there.
Yep. Thank you. Roger?
Sorry, I'm going left field a couple of times. On a lighter note, keep an eye on the General Dynamics pack dogs. General Dynamics have these amazing robotic vehicles, if you will. They look like dogs. They're robots. They can cover all kinds of terrain. They can carry heavy loads. And now's not the time, probably, but at some point, those will be a very effective tool.
Well, that's Dynamics dogs. I've seen those.
I mean, you can find all kinds of cute videos with them, but that's not the use case here.
Are you suggesting we make a note to bring that up 5 years from now, or?
I'll bring it up 5 years from now.
Very good. All right, anything additional on this?
Motion to move on?
Okay, so make a note as to your thoughts on this, and we have two more warrant articles. There's 7-3, which is the fire command car. Mike?
Yes, let me find that. Oh, actually, I just have it on my computer. So the new command car is going to replace Shift Commander, the frontline Shift Commander C3 response vehicle. Then there'll be a kind of a domino effect. The C3 vehicle will then replace an outgoing training officer car called C6. So that's kind of the domino effect that we do at, you know, in the fire department and probably in the police department and DPW also. We went and looked, Doug and I went and looked at C6, which is the training captain car. It's a 2010 Ford Expedition. We just took a look at the car and the amount of rust on it. There are some pictures, yeah, so right there, the rocker panel, that's on the driver's side. The passenger door, you open that up and you'd step in, and you can see right there that it's extremely rusted, and it's almost like the part of that door, the rocker panel, is no longer attached to the rest of the car. So it's like a huge rusty thing. I don't know how it ever passed inspection the last couple of years, to be honest with you. And there's other rusted areas as well, and you know, usually the stuff you can see on the outside of the car standing, if you got underneath, you'd see a lot of rust additionally. So it was very clear to us that this car should be taken offline. So we voted in approval 2-0.
Okay, and that's a 2010 is the model year on that, it
Yeah.
looks like? Okay. Would you like to add to that, Chief?
Yeah, it's dangerous. This is a emergency response vehicle. The training captain that drives it will respond to emergencies. We have a whole command structure, and he is our safety officer at incidents. And, you know, it's just dangerous. When I was the training captain, I had the same thing. I had a car that was falling apart, and the mechanic at the time changed the rocker panels so that it would pass inspection, and then, you know, other things rot. That's just one part of it. On that wheel well, when you can see the rust on the exterior, you know that there's rust on the other side. So, and that's on a painted surface, or originally painted surface. I'm shocked that he doesn't come in on rims sometimes, you know, and we use this as a backup to use to trailer the boat to the reservoir, our hazardous materials trailer. It's just time to go.
Okay. Doug?
I just had a couple of things from our meeting. The fire department mechanic was there with us. And just to be clear, it will not pass inspection this year. So it would take significant work and money to get it to pass inspection. And then you'd still have an old truck. There's quite a bit of rust on the undercarriage. And so, you know, I'm not sure. The other thing he did talk to us about, though, is if you remember when we built the DPW facility, there's the big car wash, truck wash that we can get every vehicle in town in. And it has an undercarriage wash, and they use it frequently. And so the expectation is that these vehicles will last longer. They've been really good about running them through there. And so hopefully we'll get a little more life and just we won't be replacing things purely because of rust underneath. So, Chris?
I think this is the perfect example of being on this committee when we've learned how fantastic our mechanics are in town and how much life they've been able to get out of vehicles, because these types of replacements seem like no-brainers. You know, a car that, sure, it probably has low miles, but has 14 years on it, and is clearly a safety issue. This is where it makes the perfect sense. And so, you know, just a huge shout out to the mechanics and the DPW that continue to keep these vehicles for the life and get value for our town out of this. So then when we have to replace these, they seem to be easier answers for us to make.
Did you have something, Roger?
Yeah, my only comment was that the backup didn't include the pictures or the written report from the mechanic. That can really support this. And I agree, this is a good example of we should need to buy a new car and rotate this one out.
I think the pictures are on the website now. They weren't originally. So.
I'm just looking at
Oh,
the materials that were off the website.
Right now? Okay.
Yeah, they are, Roger.
Oh,
Real time.
You guys must be using different websites.
Anyway.
They just went up. Tricky.
Refresh. All right. Did you have something, Frank?
I do. Just one very quick question on the estimate for this thing. The total price is at 68, and then it says command car 58, additional estimate 10K, total of 68. What's the additional estimate of $10,000?
So this estimate was from February 15th of 2023, so it's a year old. And we asked and asked and asked for a similar document, similar estimate, and to no avail. And the mechanic was in touch with the dealer, and they said you can expect to add 10,000.
Okay, so the problem that I think you're going to have, if anybody really looks at the backup, is that the detailed backup adds up to $57,474. And then you're saying that this is a year out of date, and so we're just ballparking another 10K, right? It's kind of disappointing that they can't give you a bloody estimate when you're spending $68,000.
And I suspect you won't get it for a year.
The vehicle or the estimate? All I want's the estimate.
I think unfortunately what we've seen with emergency vehicles in general, they seem to think, and probably are correct, that they have us over a barrel. You know, as I recall, we had this issue with the fire engine warrant article where getting any more detail than, here's the total number.
But it
was
should be
pretty
on a
hard.
state bid list, no?
You would think.
And this just doesn't,
All the extras.
huh?
But all the extras add up.
Well, I don't know, it would tick me off.
Chevy Tahoe is only 40, it's another 20 grand.
I mean, I want to buy the thing, I just think $10,000 in 1 year. I mean, 10% of 68 is, 7,000, so it's got like a 14% increase in 1 year. And we don't know why.
So sorry, I'm butting in here. But I think, Frank, we both know that they'll only spend what they have to spend and what's left
Oh,
won't
yeah, I
get
don't,
spent. So
I feel like the supplier is the problem here. But anyway, never mind.
I think the chief
All
agrees.
set. Great.
I hope he's not watching.
The supplier? I hope he is watching.
All right, let's all agree to be incensed about that and move on. Do we have additional comments on this? Okay, make a note of your thoughts on this one. And the final warrant article for fire is warrant article 12, the fire engine. Mike?
Yep. So this is $1.2 million to replace fire engine. As you recall, we did the ladder truck last year. I forget how much that was, maybe around $2 million. It was more expensive. But it's a similar type of situation where we have another fire engine in the fire department that's useful life of 15 years. By the time we replace this thing, order it, get the new engine in, it's going to be a 20-year-old truck, which exceeds kind of the standards, the accepted standards on the life of a fire engine. So that's one thing. This is called Fire Engine 4. So again, this new truck will come in, will be Fire Engine 1, right? And then there'll be a cascading effect, and Fire Engine 4 will be sold off or dragged into the reservoir and parked somewhere.
Seriously?
No, I'm just kidding, because there's like old DPW truck in the reservoir. I drive by and I laugh. But anyways, so Doug and I went in and we looked at Engine 4, got a good look at it. There were some pictures added, I believe, just today. So hopefully they're there now if you go look, of various areas of rust on the truck. We walked around with the mechanic and looked in the rear wheel well area at kind of the frame in there, and he could reach in and just take off big chunks with his finger, not like little flecks, but pieces almost as big as my phone coming off. That just shows that it's time to replace this. There's rust in some areas that are part of the frame system, so I think we agreed that it's definitely a need. As we just discussed, when you get the new fire engine, and including when we did this last year, you don't get a lot of detail. The idea is that they're going to build it to the typically the same specifications as the existing one. Is it the same company, Andy? So they know what they've supplied us. They know the truck. We'll tweak it a little bit, and it's basically always a custom job, so you don't get, in this case, a detailed breakdown, even though that would be nice. So we don't have all that information there. But that's, I guess, the way the industry works. Subcommittee voted 2-0 to support it.
Would you like to add to that, Chief?
On the pictures, you'll see some pictures of Engine 1 and Engine 4. Just to give you an idea that the Engine 1 is 11 years old at this point, and has similar rust issues. We are going down to the truck wash regularly now, since it was opened up. We're hoping that that is gonna have a long-term benefit for extending the life. But in reality, the 15 years is the guideline that we like to go by, where it's a frontline piece for 15 and then a reserve piece for 5. And just, rust is going to happen regardless of how many times you wash. It's steel frame, and that's gonna rust. So the new engine will take the place of engine one. Engine one in this, condition, will be able to still use it. But then that will have to be replaced down the road. Just want to be clear that when we wash the trucks and they look nice and shiny, that's the painted finished surface. If you look underneath, some of them are falling apart.
Will the DPW wash facility help with this? Should,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, it's been a couple of years that it's been open, so we don't know the results yet, but they've been very, they're great in letting us go down there. We're always able to go down, so it's a very useful facility.
Hopefully that'll pay off.
Yeah.
In terms of at least things not rusting out as much.
Cheyenne?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, I was not able to inspect this particular truck, but I was able to inspect the truck last year. I'm all for replacing it, but I do have a question. With this truck nearing the end of its life, would it be better if we were in a situation where we had to deploy all of our trucks? Would it behoove us to borrow one from a neighboring town, like say Wilmington, Woburn, wherever it's closer to the actual location of the fire or the emergency, as opposed to risking a truck that might mechanically fail on the way or during the emergency?
We have mutual aid agreements with all our surrounding towns. So if we have anything over a working fire, they're coming to Burlington to either man our station or go to the fire.
I guess my follow-up into this is like make it a number 5 as opposed to a number 4. Borrow one from say Wilmington as opposed and uses in tandem with that, just in case.
I wouldn't be keeping this any longer than necessary.
And then my
We don't have room in the
question
station for another piece of junk.
Right. And my second question to that is there any way to expedite the lead time on the build of a new truck without exceeding our budgetary allotment for said truck?
No, I mean, we order a truck and we sign on the dotted line. It puts us in line, and that however backed up they are, we're not going to be able to jump anybody.
That was okay. Otherwise, I'm all for it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Cheyenne. Chris?
Can you remind us what the years of each of our trucks are?
Each of the trucks?
Yeah, because you're saying, so it's 15 for frontline, and then you have, another 5 for potential reserve status?
I can get that for you, but I don't have it off the top
That's
of my
fine.
head.
I'm curious, and, I think we learned a lot last year about replacing fire trucks and how long it takes. And I think the only concern that I have, while I don't have any on the justification for why we need it, is we're going to have the same problem 15, 20 years from now when these two come up at the exact same time. And it's just budget crunch and budget planning. for all of us, because that's $3 million in 2 years, 15 years from now. And so it's always better, obviously, if we can space it out. Not necessarily something we have control over per se, but that's why I'd be interested to see what the years are. And then if we can't do it this time, looking in the future to try to space these a little bit better, so that these budget crunches aren't hitting, because $1.2 million to what million something it was last time, and that's a big pool of money, again, well spent money, but big pools of money that would be nice if we could separate a little bit.
John, am I correct in assuming that all the fire apparatus is in the capital plan? So it is factored into that? Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Funding source on this, John, you got any idea how you're gonna tackle
Well,
it?
it's listed as of now as bonding it, but when we have our free cash, it's gonna be.
Yeah, and do we have to encumber it, even though it'll take 4 years to build it?
Yeah, I mean, we have to have the money appropriated to order it.
Yeah, once you authorize it, it's encumbered.
Yeah, it's the wrong word. You might issue a ban on something. I don't see why we would tie up $1.1 million in a bond piece. You know, like, there's overlay money, there's free cash, there's,
I wouldn't recommend we bond it, but it's, $1 million will come with all those three options, but I think our recommendation would be free cash.
okay, all right, well, so we'll talk about that a little later. The long lead on it kind of, I don't know. I'm not having a good night with some of the ways vendors get us over a barrel.
Another
here.
item to be incensed about.
I mean, you know.
I'm surprised they aren't more motivated to get out there and build them. We must be giving them the money up
All
front.
right. I'm sorry, I'm wasting our time. We should move on.
I think I know the answer, but I'll ask anyway. How many vendors are there for this type of equipment?
Let's see, there's Spartan, E1. There's four or five. I know they consolidate, they get bought out. So
So the real question is, are we able to get a competitive bid on this when we do go to buy it?
we can get a competitive bid, but
Okay.
they won't have the exact, the way we used to do the bidding was, this is what what we want, and then we would get several bids in. But they wouldn't have the features that we want, the safety features, and that's what we've run into with Pierce. They have the features that we want. So we can ask for a competitive bid, and we did that with the tower, and yes, it came in lower, but it was, the towers that we have is steel, and they were giving us an aluminum ladder bid. So once you ask them to give, you're asking to compare apples to apples, and it's difficult, especially when you're at this phase of it. One guy's gonna tell you, oh, we can build it for this, and it's gonna overlook the safety features that we want.
Okay, so I certainly understand at this point it's difficult since they aren't apples to apples, but when we do go to order, we'll at least see what else is available to see if there might be some opportunity there. Okay, so the point is, it looks like one bid now, but we'll at least give it a try to see if we can get a competitor in there. But they do seem to have us over a barrel here. Okay, anything further on this? Oh, I'm sorry, Cheyenne. Thank you.
Just a quick follow-up. I mean, I understand the idea of, competitive bidding, but at the same time, would it make sense perhaps to spend a little more and get something that would last us longer, or give us, there are various, coatings and treatments that we can do to these, to steel that would prolong its life, as opposed to, paying less for it and then eventually having to replace it more frequently.
So I believe we get coatings on
the
trucks. And the mechanic, when he has the ability, will go under and take care of the rot as it crops up.
I mean, I understand, rust and rot are inevitable, they're completely unavoidable, but, can we make it last, a year, 5 years longer than if we spend, 100,000 more, then, would that make more sense? I'm not really sure how that would work out. I'm not sure that always, going for the lowest bidder is the best option.
All right, I think
The chief will take that into consideration. Anything further on this?
Motion to move on?
All right, I think, all right, so make your notes as to what your thoughts are on this. Thank you very much, Chief. I know we've kept you busy tonight. I appreciate you coming in. Our final budget is a little less controversial, the Ways and Means Reserve Fund. Do we have a report on that from Town Hall 1, David?
We do. This is level funded at $200,000. We have a emergency fund that's used by the Ways and Means Committee, which saves us time instead of calling a town meeting if we have an emergency expenditure. So every year we have put $200,000 in the operating budget up front, and we generally augment it with another $100,000 in January, and what's not used is returned to the town. We've not spent anything this year as of now, so accepting the royalties there.
Very good. Do we?
To approve?
Well, all right. Do we have any discussion? Thank you.
Well, I think my general question is that enough money for emergencies that we perceive? We've seen expenses go up over the past 3-4 years since the pandemic. On an exponential amount of time, this has stayed consistent. In general, I think $200,000-$300,000 for emergencies should suffice, but if we're looking at bigger expenditures, is this something that, and maybe it's not this cycle, but do we consider in the future increasing, knowing that costs have increased? Because if that is the goal, and then all of a sudden something comes in at 220, or we have $210,000, and we only have 200, so just a consideration in future is, do we actually want to look at adding some of that, knowing that costs across the board has increased?
Roger?
I think past experience there are a couple of cases where in many cases, the individual department can actually cover the initial expense, and that the reserve fund as a backstop has been enough. If we put more money in it up front and we don't use it, it just drives up the percentage of the overall gain of the budget. So I think we can take a little bit of risk here, given our past history.
Yeah, historically, we haven't even hit 100 that I recall, so we haven't really ever been close to running out.
Right. I mean, to me, it's almost a little odd that we have to do this in 2 steps. If we think there should be 300, we should just put 300 in and not have a separate warrant article because we've evaluated free cash. But
yeah,
what's on the table today is
that's been the general, for the vast audience out there, the general point of that is that we wait until free cash is certified before doing the final 100. And it also gives us a chance that if we do spend some before January, it's topped off up to 300. So, if we spent 50, we would probably allocate 150 in January, for example. So it gives us a second look, but yeah. Any further discussion on this?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Very good. All right, this is to approve the Ways and Means Reserve Fund budget of $200,000. David?
Yes.
Roger?
yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, that's 12-0-0. Okay, next on our agenda here is the debt and large projects update. I want to just mention a couple things in this context first. As you recall, we did a presentation last week's meeting, so I did want to give a small correction on the informational part of that, which is for Proposition 2.5 overrides, it only takes the majority of the select board to put that on the ballot. For debt exclusions, it takes 2/3. So for the thing that we care about right now, the data was correct. That is a 2/3 vote. So in an encouraging note, we actually got a bit of feedback on this, both online and with emails and so on. So our listening audience is larger than might be indicated normally, so that's great. So I wanted to give a couple clarifications. The first one is that everyone here and in the administration is completely clear that when we say taxpayers, we understand that that's homeowners who are paying it directly. We understand that includes renters who are paying it indirectly through their rent. We understand that includes commercial landowners and their lessees. So there's no confusion that taxpayers does not just mean homeowners here. So I wanted to clarify that. And the other one is just regarding the debt exclusion vote that we had a bit of a conversation about. I think it's clear from, it was very clear in our subcommittee meetings and also in our full meeting that everyone wants to maximize the turnout of engaged and informed voters. You know, there's no confusion there. And what Ways and Means settled on was recommending the April local election as a natural choice for a local issue. And, you know, just note, as we saw the signs out front today, there's early voting, mail-in voting, so specific dates of elections becomes less of an issue of, you know, someone having to work that day or something. But, you know, we understand there's a lot of various opinions on the best way to accomplish this. And so, you know, it's great that everyone's commenting on that. But along those lines, what we want to do is our part for informing the electorate and all the various boards and committees. And to that end, I gave that same presentation to the Fox Hill School Building Committee, which includes the school committee last night. A lot of good conversation there. And on the agenda for the next police station building committee to present there, the dates being finalized on that, and also presenting to the select board on March 25th. So we're doing a big informational campaign here at least. So, you know, we're at least trying to do our part in keeping folks informed. We'll see how that goes. And I believe Ed may have had some thoughts that you wanted to express.
Well, you covered it. Thank you. I received some very specific feedback also. I just also want to state emphatically that every resident is a stakeholder. So I apologize if I misspoke and implied to anyone anything other than that. But I think we're all square on that. The other specific feedback I got is that I mentioned that the first determination we made is that we could afford the schools, which is why we recommended bonding and funding them. And the question was, well, what do you mean by afford? So I think we have a lot of work to, you know, lay out specifically what the results of our analysis is. And so I think that highlights the work we have to do to put together good information to inform the vote in particular, but also to inform town meeting on the bonding articles.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to clarify, the feedback I think a lot of us received too via email wasn't necessarily on taxpayers, it was stakeholders. And that is something that I brought up when I dissented in my vote on this as well, because I still believe that a bigger election is a much better place for this to take place because more voters will show up. And I think that is the ultimate goal. This is going to affect the entire town and everyone who pays taxes, from our 18-year-olds to our 90-year-olds. And so that was continued to have been my push, is wanting to have this at a bigger election where we're going to get more of our town to have a voice. And the dissent then came of saying, well, the stakeholders are the ones that show up to our local election. And as we've talked about, that's a very small amount. It's about 16%. And we need more people than that to be able to come out to these elections. And so, yes, you are right, Mr. Chair, it is more accessible. There is absentee, there is the ability to send in, go early. So for sure, we have that chance. But I think all of our goals here is to have as much people be able to participate. And so I still dissent from the plan that we had presented because I philosophically disagree with that approach.
Do we have anything further on project updates that anyone wanted to add here?
I'd like to say something.
Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
I think we've hopefully resolved that. I think it highlights how important our role is going to be in educating the electorate. And we can discuss back and forth about who votes in which election and whichever election it ends up being on. I think the education component is going to be critical. I think if it ends up on a bigger state or national ballot, it's going to be really critical because it's going to be harder to engage some people that's just not necessarily their focus. But in this last few days, I've watched debates for the townwide offices, and there's still quite a bit of misinformation being given as fact. And so I think we need to be very clear that from this body and from the town administration, no one is saying that we're going to have a Proposition 2.5 override vote in September. I think that's a dangerous thing to say. I think it's just said in either the heat of the moment or it's a misunderstanding. This town is in excellent financial shape. We really are very fortunate for the shape that we're in. And there's political things going on, and that's fine, but for the general taxpayer and person who lives in this town, you need to know that the town is in excellent financial shape. And what we've decided is that we could indeed afford to build a police station and an elementary school to the tune of a combined close to $100 million. That's a crazy number. And still do it within our budget. It makes it scary if we do some doomsday reporting and if we're conservative, which is what we like to do, but it fits. And in the same environment, when building costs have skyrocketed at a pace that no one would have, if we had come and said, oh, we better budget $100 million for these two projects, people would have thrown us out because it would have been stupid 5 years ago. It would have been wasteful and it wouldn't have been a good plan. So even in light of all of that, we're still in good shape financially. We're just trying to stay in good shape financially. And I think we need to then really work on the education component, try to stay out of the political side of it, but really educate the voter because the debt exclusion is an accounting decision that the town can make. We can bond this, we can pay for it. We're asking that we do a debt exclusion because it makes things a little more comfortable and really gives us a little more flexibility in the future. And if you're not sure the importance of that, I just read an article about Brookline, and they're talking about laying off significant numbers of staff in their school system. I think there are several other towns that are facing Prop 2.5 override votes just to pay for their regular operating budget. And so we're in a good position. We want to stay in a good position, and it's going to be a lot of work to make sure that people understand even the vocabulary, the difference between a Prop 2.5 override and a debt exclusion. And there's a lot of overlapping things. The state didn't help us with their frequent use of 2.5 either. So we have a lot of work to do, and I think it's incumbent on us to really learn the material and try to figure out how to explain it to people because it keeps coming up. So that's what I had to say.
Okay. Anything further on the debt issue? All right, so just going back to the budget very quickly, we have, just want to make sure we got our to-do list correct here. I'll be rescheduling the emergency management. Actually, a quick question for John before you go, perhaps. Do we have a date when we think negotiated settlements will be ready, or you're pondering that still?
I can give you some feedback tomorrow.
Okay, and then the other one would be, when does Town Hall 1 plan to meet with administration to have a free cash capital budget thing squared away so we can vote on those?
We're waiting to finalize.
Yeah, so
the
the warrant articles are due next Friday.
Okay.
So we'll have an official list of articles.
Okay.
As you know, somehow there was an unofficial list posted on the Ways and Means site. I don't know how that happened, but the official list won't be till next Friday, and then it makes sense to wait till after that, because then we can have a conversation on the actuals and not hypothetical of what will be submitted and won't.
Sounds great, and thank you very much for putting the preliminary stuff up there so that we can be discussing it. Okay, great. Sorry to keep you after school. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, John.
Take care, John. So long, Sam. All right, our final item to vote on is the minutes, and I realize I sent those out fairly recently. Are folks ready to vote on that, or would you prefer to wait? Any thoughts on that? You guys?
I'm ready. I have one correction that's important. Other than that,
Yep, go
they'll look
ahead.
fine. On the OPEB item, which is number 9 on the thing,
Yep.
it's listed as a 19.3% increase. I might have fooled somebody when I suggested we spend $38 million.
It's only 10% high.
On OPEB.
Right, I assume that
I think take the 1 away and we'll be fine.
9.3 would be the correct number. Okay, I'll get that added in there, or adjusted in there. Is there anyone who would, yeah, Doug?
I think we're supposed to do this. I should know how we do this, but can we include the slideshow, the presentation in the minutes?
Yes, absolutely. I'll submit those along with the minutes. That's a very good point.
Anything that's presented at the meeting needs to be attached to the minutes.
Yep. Is there anyone who would like to wait before voting on this? Okay,
Second.
all right, very good. We'll vote now then. All right, so just to be clear, that's I'll interpret your motion to approve is with the
As amended.
amendment as Frank had mentioned. Okay, very good. Oops. All right, this is voting to approve the March 13th meeting minutes. David?
Abstain.
Oops. Roger?
Yes.
Ed?
Almost done. Yes.
Yes? Okay. Rob?
Speed
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Steve? Frank?
Yes.
Mike?
Abstain.
Doug?
Yes.
Chris Campbell?
No.
Is there something about the minutes that
Yeah.
you'd like to correct, or?
Yeah, my statement in here is not accurate.
Okay, well then, I'm sorry, before we vote then,
I was going to, and then you guys moved, and I go, okay, well, just vote no.
I'm sorry, I missed,
We want the record to be correct. so-
yeah, let's get it correct. I'm holding off voting for a moment here. What is it that you would like?
I mean, it just says that I discussed concerns about MSBA timelines and debt exclusion becoming a political issue, discussed preferring debt exclusion to be voted together at town meeting, which was true, but then that's it. And I believe that I said much more than that at the last meeting. And I would have to go back and actually formalize that.
Okay.
Why don't we suspend the vote?
I'm going to suspend that if that's okay with folks.
Yeah.
All right, and if you could send
to.
whatever correction you'd like, then we'll work that in. All right. thank-
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Sorry to have not caught that earlier. All right, so we're going to mark that as vote delayed till next week.
Time certain.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that official language. And speaking of next week, our next meeting is this coming Wednesday, a week from now, Wednesday. That'll include DPW with their various accommodated accounts, Youth and Family Services, Historical Commission, Town Clerk, Board of Registrars, Board of Appeals, Town Meeting Reports, which is Town Hall 1 for you guys. We'll also be talking about the DPW warrant articles or we won't be, because we won't be ready to do that.
Correct.
Very good. We will not be talking about the DPW warrant articles. Yes, Steve?
Just for the local education committee, the school department set us proposed dates for our budget review meeting, so please let me know so I can get back to them. And then in terms of the vote, we'll for the budget, we'll likely have to do that Wednesday right before the 4:10 meeting, because I know two of us will be traveling during that course beforehand, so we'll probably have to vote that Wednesday.
So
The Wednesday 4:10, which is when we would normally do which is the time you have scheduled for the local education budgets.
Right, so I'm not sure I caught your point there.
The
You're
sub-
saying the subcommittee will be
We'll have
meeting
to
that
vote.
same day?
We'll have to meet that same day, right, at like 5 or 6 before to cover the votes. We'll be able to vote on the warrant articles for the schools beforehand because they'll vote on it Tuesday night, next Tuesday, and then we'll meet after that. So we'll at least have those taken care of, and we can do the Shawshene budget beforehand. But the actual school budget, which is normally modified right towards the end of their cycle, we'll have to vote after that school committee meeting anyways, but it'll have to be that 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock on Wednesday, 4:10.
So this is a heads up to your subcommittee to be
Correct.
ready to do that?
Yes.
All right, great. Sounds like you may want to send an email just to.
Well, I did, but I wanted to also make sure I
You're-
got their attention at this forum.
You're doing everything perfectly. Thank you very much, Steve.
No, not really, but that's okay. Thank you for that.
You've got me fooled. All right. Very good. So that's for next week. Is there anything else that needed to be covered tonight that we missed here?
Motion to adjourn?
All right, I think that's everything. All right.